launching Operation Warm Welcome, the way by which we're going to, well, look after those Afghans that looked after us in Afghanistan. Just tell us a bit more about it.
Very much so. Well, over the last 2 weeks alone, we've evacuated some 15,000 people to our country. And of course, since April, we've evacuated more people who have done right by us. They're the people who on the ground over the last 20 years have been working with our soldiers, helping to protect them, helping to translate, helping to make our embassies and other areas work. And so the Prime Minister's commitment is absolutely clear to this. They have done right by us. We want to do right by them. And so today I'm delighted that we're launching Operation Warm Welcome to give a warm welcome to everyone who has landed on our shores in recent weeks, but in the longer term as well, and make sure that with us, with our help, they can build bright futures in our country.
Of course, the option to have indefinite leave to remain will be grabbing everyone's attention, but there's also a lot more assistance for those that have arrived under RARAP as well.
Very much so. So we have today announced indefinite leave to remain, as you say, which is important because it means that they have, for example, rights to work. And so many of the people that we've been watching on our television screens over the last few days have expressed the wish to give back to the UK once they're settled here with their families. But we also want people to integrate. You know, this has got to be fair to the British people as well as to our new Afghan neighbours and friends. And so we are setting out plans to help adults and those who don't speak English to learn our language so that they can contribute fully to our society, and also, importantly, educating those children. Their children have witnessed the most traumatic scenes in recent weeks, and we want to get those children into our schooling system with the right help, the right support, so that, again, we're building positive futures for them. And so we're announcing £12 million to support that education effort. We're also conscious, of course, as well, that there will be some very severe medical needs. Again, some of the trauma that people will have witnessed and experienced, we must confront, we must deal with. And so we're announcing a further £3 million to help with the healthcare needs of people. And in addition, of course, everybody needs homes. And so there's a long-term piece of work to ensure that we're able to provide homes for people who have come to our country.
Minister, so all of this applies to those who have come here and will continue to come here under the Afghan Relocation and Assistance Programme. What about those who will be coming here under the resettlement scheme? Will they be afforded indefinite leave to remain as well?
Well, we're very much working on this scheme at the moment. You'll appreciate that this is it's a huge task ahead of us, and we want to get it right. And look, we've done this before because we've done this with the Syrian Resettlement Programme. And that has been widely been judged to be a success. And so we want to take the very best parts of that scheme to build this new scheme to help those who are vulnerable within Afghanistan, those who may have espoused Western values, who may have stood up for women's rights, for example, as well as sorry to interrupt, Minister, because we've got finite time. But just in terms of, we have already suggested that we will be taking 5,000 people separately under the resettlement scheme this year alone. When they get here, has it been decided yet whether or not they will be allowed to be granted indefinite leave to remain? As I say, please don't read anything into it other than we're just working on it at the moment. As I say, this is a very, very fast-paced, very, very large task. And I've got 10,000 people staying in quarantine hotels today, for example. We've got to make plans for the bridging accommodation that they move into once they're released from quarantine. So these decisions will be made in due course. But I very much hope that from the announcements today, British people, but also importantly, Afghans who have moved to our country very recently, really get the sense of how warm and welcoming the government wants to be towards them. And indeed, this is reflected in the response of British people themselves. We've seen over the last few days how generous people have been. I know in Scarborough, for example, people turned up to the hotel where Afghans are staying with toys, with nappies, with clothes, trying to do their best to help. And we want to very much take advantage and seize every opportunity of kindness that people are able to offer. And we're developing at the moment a portal that people will be able to log on to register how they can hope to help Afghan friends moving into their area.
Indeed, but of course, you know, time is, in essence, of the essence for those who remain in Afghanistan at the moment. We know from speaking to the Foreign Secretary yesterday that at least several hundred, low hundreds, but several hundred, British nationals remain in Afghanistan. There are also thousands of others who may have been able to qualify for ARAP or may have been able to qualify for the resettlement scheme. And at the moment, the advice seems to be get to the border, get over the border. What happens after that point? How can they then make their way to the United Kingdom, or indeed is there a processing centre? We've heard that talked about a number of times.
Yeah, so the Foreign Office, as the Foreign Secretary set out yesterday, the Foreign Office are in intense discussions with third countries in the region because we want to make sure that if people are coming to the border, which they will be, that those third countries are able to deal fairly and efficiently with those people. And so we're very much in discussions with them. Of course, part of this is ensuring that the Taliban do what the UN Security Council resolution requires them to do, namely to offer safe passage to people who are rightly travelling to the borders to seek sanctuary. And
what will we do? How far are we prepared to go with the Taliban if they renege on promises that they have already made in terms of safe passage?
So Simon Gass it's been announced overnight. So Simon Gass, the Prime Minister's representative on Afghan resettlement, is special envoy, is very much there in Doha at the moment discussing with senior Taliban figures on the future. And I don't want to in any way impinge on those discussions. But the international community is watching very closely what the Taliban is doing and will do over the next weeks and months. And the Foreign Secretary and others have been clear that we will use every lever at our disposal, diplomatic and otherwise, to ensure that the Taliban lives up to the resolution that was passed by the Security Council.
As mentioned before, of course, those relocating here under ARAP, the Afghan relocation programme, I mean, they are people who have assisted us, in our fight in Afghanistan and their families, and people will not begrudge them being helped when they reach this country. But do you not accept that you have, in essence, now created another tier, another class, perhaps, within our immigration and asylum system?
Well, I don't think anyone watching the scenes that we've seen over the last couple of weeks could have failed to have been moved by the terror, the desperation, the anguish, the fear that people were experiencing, not just outside the gates of the airport, but also, of course, across the country. And so I very much, and I have complete confidence that, as you say, British people will understand that and will want to respond. And in fairness,
but do you accept that they are going to be treated differently by the immigration and asylum programme to anyone else?
Well, we have already the model for this with the Syrian resettlement scheme. As I say, that was set up in 2015. We went to great efforts to ensure that accommodation and other services were already set up in advance of Syrians being lifted from refugee camps to come to this country for safe sanctuary. These circumstances are obviously pretty different, not least because we've had to evacuate people at such a fast pace into the UK. But I would hope that, given the effort, the work that these translators, these security guards, these Afghan army members have done for us over the last 2 decades, the British soldiers they will have worked with, the lives potentially some of them will have saved. I'm very much hoping that we'll be able to, as I say, do right by them just as they did right by us.
Just very specifically on the rehousing of those who are coming here, do we really have the capacity to rehome 20,000 plus Afghans over the next 5 years? I mean, we heard from the Local Government Association Chairman James Jamieson earlier, the nature of the refugees we're seeing, significantly larger families. Housing stock, as you well know, is at a premium in every part of the country, particularly when we get to the larger sizes, and we're kind of giving a £5 million top-up payment to local authorities. That's not going to quite cover it alone, is it?
Look, I want to be straight with people. This is a very, very difficult challenge. And we are very, very aware of the pressures on the housing market and the housing lists already. That is why we have announced this, as you say, top-up fund to help councils find larger properties for Afghan families. But it comes back to integration again. This policy will succeed if we welcome and we integrate people into our societies, and we get them settled into accommodation, help their children get into schools, get them registered at GPs and so on, and then they can begin to pay back into our society. And I've heard some wonderful stories over the last few days. You know, people who have fought with the British Army, have translated for the British Army, determined when they can to, if they're allowed to join the British Army, others who very much want to study so that they can continue their medical careers and so on. There have been some really, really inspirational stories that we've heard from people who have. And so we really, really want to help them achieve that.
I just want to squeeze in just a kind of a final comment. Of course, Afghans fleeing the country will be trying to get to different parts of the world for safety by a variety of means. We understand, of course, from this government that in future you are seeking to deny asylum to people who arrive in the UK having passed through other safe countries. It would seem that at some point in the not-too-distant future, there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of Afghans who have made their way through safe countries coming to the UK and trying to claim asylum. Will we truly deny them asylum at that point because they have passed through safe countries?
We are absolutely determined to crack down on the illegal people trafficking gangs that we see exploiting the channel, exploiting people for profit. It is incredibly dangerous for people to make these journeys. I mean, my previous career, I used to prosecute criminals for a living, and some of the migration cases I saw at the time were truly, truly horrific. And so we want to stop that. And we've got to send this very clear message out to the people traffickers that if they do this, if they're caught, then they will be dealt with in our justice system. And when you, just to underline how dangerous it is, I mean, very recently, someone sadly died in the Channel trying to make their journey across. So this is why, as part of this package, we're saying, look, we won't put up with illegal immigration, but please, please use safe and legal routes. And that's why the Afghan resettlement scheme is so important, and taking, you know, what little time we've taken to set it up properly is vital, because we want to help people who you know should come to this country. We want to help them come here legally and safely, as indeed we did with the Syrian resettlement scheme.